So John Jones and Stipe Miocic are slotted for November 11th. Now I'm really excited about this bout. However, I think I would have been more excited for this matchup if it happened maybe 5 years ago. And I think John has a youth factor on Stipe, which is crazy to say. It's a very obvious thing to say. However, crazy because John Jones has been fighting for so long. I think a lot of people tend to forget how much time John Jones could have, even though he's been talking about retirement after this fight, which I think John should stay. He should stay in the heavyweight game for a little bit, and then you have nothing else. You have nothing else to do with the UFC. You've crushed two divisions, but besides that, I think, like I said, I would have liked to have seen these two fight maybe 5 years ago. I think this is a great stylistic matchup. John and Stipe both have really solid striking, and they both obviously have really good ground games. And so to see them both in their prime still, when they both have momentum, I think that would have been a phenomenal thing to see. And they've been in talks about fighting each other for a couple years now, especially seriously. I'd say for the last, 2 years or so. But for obvious reasons, on especially John's side, it's been hard to really get any matchups to form. And so if I had to see how this fight went, I think John, like I said, has the advantage, especially in the youth factor, in his prime factor. I don't think John is outside of his prime yet. And so that's going to play a huge role within this fight. I think Stipe is still dangerous. However, you have to weigh in that who is in their prime factor, and John has that in his favor. And so I see this fight going not as competitive as we would probably like. I think John is going to dominate in a couple of areas. I think, his kicking game is superior to Stipe. He has that youth factor. I think that his striking has evolved to a point to where John is a very dangerous striker. He doesn't have a ton of power in his hands, or he isn't known to have a bunch of power in his hands. That's why we really haven't seen a full-fledged knockout with a punch from John. However, John has a bunch of other factors, a bunch of other tools in his arsenal. He has knocked out, some fighters, knocked out, TKO, I should put, with his kicks. His kicks have caused a lot of damage to a lot of fighters, and I think that that's going to play a big factor. And I also think that John likes to dominate his fights with his wrestling as well, and I think we're going to see that too. As crazy as that may sound, we're going to see him play the wrestling card on Stipe. Now, Stipe's way of winning this, I think, is to put a pressure on John, but I don't think that pressure is going to be enough. I really don't see a clear-cut way of Stipe winning this unless it's by a flash knockout, a power punch. He does have that. Stipe does have power in his hands. He has enough power in his hands to knock out John, I think. But getting to John allowing him to even settle in enough to get those kinds of shots off, I think is slim. And so I have John winning probably in the, I'll say, third round. I think it's going to go back and forth maybe for a little bit, for maybe the half of the first round. They're going to be in this feeling out process, but after that, I think John is going to settle in, and he's going to showcase his creativity and his abilities, which is another thing that I think John has a huge advantage over. I should mention this, that John is a very creative fighter. There's nothing really original, and when I mean original, there's nothing really. He's not a stylistic, to the T kickboxer or a wrestler. He's very good at being creative with all of his attributes, and I think that's going to cause Stipe some problems. And Stipe is a very generic. That's the word I was looking for. Generic fighter. But Stipe is very good at being a generic fighter. You know, he's a very good boxer. He'll just stand in the pocket and just box with you. Boom, 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 boom. And he's very good at coupling punches together. He's not the kind of fighter, which I think he had the edge over Francis Ngannou in this factor. Obviously, that didn't work out for Stipe for the most part. Now, he did get one over Francis, but I think the clear-cut advantage that he had over Francis was that Stipe can couple punches together. He can move pretty well for a heavyweight. You don't really see in the heavyweight division in the UFC heavyweights coupling together their punches with combinations. It's usually one or two shots, and they rely on their power to just get them through. They rely on the fact that if I touch you on the chin, you're going out. But Stipe is very good at moving and utilizing his boxing combinations, which I think could pose some difficulties to John. But John comes from that light heavyweight division, and so he's used to moving around. He's used to guys being a little bit faster, coupling punches together a little bit more. You know, when I think of his fight with Alexander Gustafsson, when I think of his fights with even DC, when I think of his fights with a lot of the light heavyweights, a lot of them were able to couple together combinations a lot better than the heavyweights. And we're just talking about one weight class apart from each other, and there's a clear-cut difference. And that clear-cut difference is their ability to just throw combinations. And I think that's another advantage for John. He's seen that kind of style before, but it's also an advantage for Stipe because although John has seen that kind of style before, Stipe carries power that the light heavyweights did not have. And so going into this fight, like I said, I have John winning in about the third round. And so I hope John doesn't retire after this fight. I would like to see him fight other, heavyweights. You got Aspinall out there, which I don't think would be a huge draw. I think a lot of people would pick John too. I think in any matchup at this point in time, when I look at the heavyweight division, I just don't see anybody in that division that John really has to worry about. I think, especially since Francis has left the division, which I believe was probably his most, it was definitely his most dangerous fight in that division. And yeah, I think the heavyweight division is kind of stale at the moment. And I think John has a great chance of cleaning out that division. He's already beat Gon, and if he beats Stipe, excuse me, who else will he really have in that division? Like I said, Aspinall's out there, and a couple of others who are decent fighters. I think, even somebody like seeing, Volkov might be an interesting fight. Even maybe a Tai Tuivasa, who are fighting, but I don't see either one of them beating John. I think John is so good at grappling. He's so good at striking. He's so good at utilizing distance and space and everything in between. He's such a complete fighter. I don't see any of them really posing a threat. And so that's my prediction, people. Comment down below what you think, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.